It's currently 5 in the morning and I'm here at St. Pancras International Station, about to take a 13-hour train journey to Berlin. Sounds a bit excessive, right? Why take a train for 13 hours when the plane is less than 2? Well, that's exactly what I aim to find out today. You see, trains in Europe are often hailed as the gold standard. You got no long security lines, you got no baggage fees, it's more comfortable. You got cool sounds like that. But is this reputation so deserved? Today, I'm gonna be comparing the train journey to Berlin from London with the reverse by plane to see how it really stacks up. Not just in time, convenience, and price, but in some hidden trade-offs I feel like a lot of people don't consider. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Edinger, that YouTuber that has his hand in every single niche. I've taken planes, trains, and everything in betweens. I should probably get going. My train leaves in 45 minutes and I still gotta pass through passport control because, Brexit. Let's go. Time to board.
One of the big selling points of taking the train is you don't have to wake up as early to head to an airport far out of the city. But unlucky for me, my train was scheduled for 6:04 a.m., meaning the only way of getting there in time was taking the night bus. All things considered though, not that bad. When I did finally make it to St. Pancras International, it seems I wasn't the only one traveling this early.
Hello, good sir. You also going to Berlin? What? There he goes.
Security for international train travel is by and large less stressful than via plane, but once you get through security, you're usually kept in a very small holding area with naught to do except wait in an enormous queue for a Pret coffee. And as a proper Brit, I know what to do when I see a queue. So I got a coffee. It was still 5:30 in the morning. Eventually, our train arrived at the platform and we legged it to our carriage. I got very excited to see how comfy these seats looked, only to realize, oh, that's the first class cabin. The doors shut on me automatically. Poetic. Unlike on a plane, this train offered lots of space to store my suitcase at either end of the carriage and even some more space overhead, and I wasn't charged for it. I found my seat on the very packed train quite comfortable, all things considered. Usually, as a 192 centimeter tall guy, traveling can get quite uncomfortable. But the Eurostar seating was honestly not that bad. My knees weren't even hitting the front. That right there is a tall win. Once the train got moving and I had whooped some people's butts in my Duolingo league, I decided to have a little walk around. This is probably the nicest part of taking the train versus the plane. There's just more freedom and space. I did envy people who'd gotten the seats with the table in between, but hey, my ticket was only 100 quid, so I was not complaining. Eventually, I made my way to the dining carriage, which was quite plain, even though it was a train. But their croissants looked surprisingly good, and they even had this little area you could stand at to eat if you so pleased. I did not so please. But while this croissant did look surprisingly good, we are also quickly approaching the point where everything starts to go horribly wrong. The Eurostar might be nice for now, but let's just say the second leg of this journey left me questioning everything.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, God. This is not good.
Before biting into my croissant, I looked out the window to see something I've never seen before. Yeah, apparently even cars want a taste of that European train experience. Who knew cars could be so eco-friendly? Yeah, I've just never seen a train carrying cars like that before. The American in me has only ever seen big tractor trailers carrying 8 different cars on its back. And it makes sense that there would be trains that did that as well for cars. I'd just never seen it before. So, hey, this experience got me a first. Now, one thing that can't happen in a plane, stopping all of a sudden. You just fall out of the air. Our train came to a complete stop for some reason in Belgium, but we soon found out why.
The people in the tracks are caught by the police. Will be probably arriving in Rotterdam on time. Thank you for your patience.
And of course, I hear you. You're saying, Evan, please show us the toilet. That's so specific, but all right, I did actually film myself in the toilet. And hey, look, I can stand up straight without bonking my head on the ceiling. That I genuinely cannot do in most plane toilets. A little over 4 hours after leaving London, we finally made it to Amsterdam. Here's where I was given over 2.5 hours of a layover to do whatever I liked. I've traveled all over the world, and usually when you have a layover at an airport, that's where you kind of have to stay, so you don't ever get a chance to actually do anything in the city that you're in. Luckily for me, the Eurostar dropped me off right at Amsterdam Central Station, which meant I could pretty much do anything I wanted in the city for the next 2 hours. So I dropped off my suitcase for about €8 at the station.
I like my suitcase.
And immediately headed out to hit up as many things as I could in the short amount of time I had.
If this were a flight and I had a layover, I'd kind of just be stuck at the airport, because even if you do have 2 hours layover, that's barely enough time to get through the airport and get to boarding and all the other faff. Here, I could kind of enjoy what we do in Amsterdam. Get some stroopwafel. You know, if you've seen my video on Amsterdam before, you would know. My top stroopwafels. Let's go get it.
I saw some Dutch bikes, I saw some Dutch cheese, and I went into one of those Dutch coffee shops I'd heard so much about. I don't know what type of caffeine they're putting in this stuff, but whoo boy, really felt that. After picking up one of my favorite stroopwafels in the city that I made a video about linked above, and walking on various streets and soaking in the beauty of the Dutch canals, I found a place you can go to change your pot, but they wouldn't accept any of the weed that I just bought, so I went into an American supermarket instead. This American supermarket had all the staples of my childhood. Sugary cereals, Sour Patch Kids, Pop-Tarts, and of course, Maxi Pads. As I headed back to the station, I was feeling so happy and excited to carry on the rest of my train journey to Berlin, absolutely sure nothing could ruin this perfect trip. Little did I know, the real journey was about to begin.
All right, well, this is not good. According to the sign, it looks like my train is no longer going to Berlin, which is where I'm going, so that is troubling. I now need to figure out what the heck I'm going to be doing. It's already a long journey, so any little mishap like this is gonna cost me. Ah, God.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, Eurostar, arguably a pretty great train, can only take you as far as from London to Amsterdam. The second half of my journey was run by Deutsche Bahn. Turns out Deutsche Bahn decided to not have my train take me to Berlin anymore. If my name were Ben, I'd be sure to be having a bad Ben time. Bad Bentheim, as you can see on this map, is very much on the complete other side of Germany as Berlin, so I was quite miffed. But surely Deutsche Bahn couldn't make my journey any worse, right? Our train departed Amsterdam, and at this point I realized I was just kinda dead. I'd been traveling since 4 in the morning, and despite the lovely refreshing time in Amsterdam, I was starting to feel the effects of traveling all day. Sure, the views out the window were quite nice as we passed by some lovely scenery, Dutch cycle paths, and we even went through that Dutch city I vlogged myself cycling through and called a town, angering the entire country as it's like one of their biggest cities. Sorry guys, I'm from London, what can I say? The seating on this Deutsche Bahn train wasn't nearly as nice as the Eurostar one, but obviously that wasn't the worst part about the service. The seats had this interesting reclining feature where it only worked if you actively put a large amount of pressure against it, but the moment you tried to relax, it would just slide itself back forward. Who designed this? For whom? Why? Germans do not like to relax. Also, one thing I found interesting was this little bin they put in between the seats. It truly felt so small for mostly anything, but the image on the front with an apple core felt like a nice recommendation. So I put my banana peel in there and closed it back up. But it honestly felt like I was pulling a prank here. Do they actually have someone check every single one of these tiny bins after every journey? Sounds like a rubbish job to me. Then, a rainbow out the window felt like a sign from God. Maybe, just maybe, I'd have a good Ben time after all. That is until the conductor dropped even worse news on us.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a problem with the engine. Engine drivers try to solve it. Please be patient. We will depart shortly.
I'm not having a good Ben time. I'm not even having a bad Ben time. I'm having no Ben time at all. They're not taking me there. They're not even taking me into Germany. Reason being, there just weren't enough trains. I guess the train I was on didn't count. So now I had to spend an extra 2 hours in the small Dutch town of Hengelo. So I did a little shaka there because I'm hanging low. Anyway, surely nothing else could go wrong. I stopped by a local place for a kebab, which was better than anything in London, but still nowhere near what you get in Berlin, and then had to wander around the town to get the most out of this unfortunate delay. Weirdly enough, it was 4 p.m. on a Friday, and the place was super dead. This looked like a nice square, but where was everybody? This was a nice little park, but yet again, I walked alone. Does anyone even live in Hengelo? It just felt like I was in some sort of, film set. I found a puddle and sat here for ages to try and get a nice photo, but these were the best I could come up with. Then I headed back to the station, only to face Europe's worst feature: paid toilets. Not only does this toilet charge you 50p to enter, its disgusting smelling room, it also doesn't actually let you in. I tried 2 different toilets, which happily took my money, but then wouldn't even open the door. Actual robbery. Luckily for me, I got one of the station staff to let me in as I began to wait another hour for the next train to pull in. Except it wasn't just an hour, because it's Deutsche Bahn, so even that train that was delayed was delayed. Another 35 minutes. At this point, I was starting to wonder, how could anything be worse than this? Surely the flight back to London would be smoother, right? Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. When the train finally arrived, everyone was freezing. Everybody boarded, and then at long last, we entered Germany. I still had a long way to go. At least I got a seat with a table to rest against, but this seat interestingly had its little apple core bins at the edge of the table. I sadly did not have an appealing gift to give it this time. The train traveled and traveled and traveled and traveled and traveled as I lost my sanity until finally, at long last, my train finally arrived at the Berlin Hauptbahnhof. The station is so incredibly massive and a beautiful piece of infrastructure, especially with all the Christmas decorations up. But at this point, I'd been traveling for a full 18 hours, so I hopped on the nearest tram, rode it to East Berlin, and finally, on foot, I came to my hotel, which had been expecting me 4 hours earlier.
I'm almost there.
But Germans are so used to Deutsche Bahn's awful service at this point, it was actually expected. At long last, I made it to my room and collapsed.
All in all, I would not do this again. I honestly would not recommend it. It's just so draining to spend the entire day traveling. Sure, I could get up, I could walk around, I could enjoy seeing out the dirty windows of the Eurostar, but it just doesn't make sense to spend 12, 13, 14, 15, 18 hours traveling when you can do it in 2 a lot easier, even considering the time it takes to get to the airport and security and whatnot, especially when there are more variables involved, especially when one of those variables is Deutsche Bahn. All in all, it kind of felt similar to when I've taken 13-hour coach trips. Much more cramped, yes, but energy depletion-wise, it's very similar. I'm actually looking forward to taking the plane back because I really, really never want to do that again. Didn't help that there was no place to charge my computer, so after like 4 hours, I couldn't do anything. I'm just on my phone, like, God. Didn't even practice German, I practiced Spanish. It's currently midnight. I've been up for 18 hours. That's not true. I've been up for 21 hours just to take a train from London to Berlin. Shouldn't have taken this long. I'm gonna get some sleep.
After an amazing couple days in Berlin shooting an upcoming video on public transit and having some delicious kebabs with my friend Dodi, it was time to finally head to the airport. It only took about 45 minutes to get to the airport via train and then a further 45 minutes to get through security. Really not that bad.
So I've just gotten to Berlin's airport, the BER, the Brandenburg. Honestly, we went through security very fast, took about 15, 20 minutes. Obviously not gonna be filming in security. Took about 45, 55 minutes to get there on the tram, so we've got to add that up into consideration, but you know how I fly. We're already here, we're about to board, so let's get on the plane.
After wondering why people always stand up like 18 hours before their own boarding section is called, our boarding section was called, so we stood up.
It is boarding our group, I believe, so.
We scanned our passports, and we were then told some rather foreboding news.
So very similar to my train journey to Berlin, I've now experienced a bit of a bit of a delay, because there's a huge storm happening in London at the moment. So the plane is taking off at the right time, but we're just gonna circle around London to the airport for about a half hour before landing, probably, so.
We made our way through the long passage of the door of our flight today, which was on an Embraer 190, where I snapped this thumbnail pic. They were so overbooked for this flight, though, that the people that did stand up super early got to put their random items in the overhead compartments, leaving no space for anyone else's stuff. So we were told we'd have to check our bags. Luckily for me, I always have a way out of this. My bags hold way too many lithium batteries for my cameras and things, which are not allowed in the hold. So after some shuffling around, we got to put our luggage overhead somewhere up front, and we made it to our standard short haul seats. Nothing to write home about, but it does beat Ryanair's fleet that causes immense pain fitting my legs in. It's always a bit of a battle trying to fit both my long legs and my camera backpack under the seat, but that's sadly what you get when you're flying short-haul economy. All things considered, this British Airways variation of this plane wasn't that bad, and luckily for me, the person in front didn't recline. If they had, there would have been a scream. Dodie and I then diligently paid attention to the flight safety demonstration. As you know, it might differ slightly from any other time you've flown before. Just take your heels off before riding the slide out the window. We then took off. No matter how many times I've flown, I do always enjoy how peaceful everything looks out the window of the plane. Dodie showed me a feature of these airplane seats I'd literally never seen before, where you can place your phone in this nifty little spot on the back of the seat in front of you. That's so handy. For me though, I pulled out my laptop to edit some photos from the trip. Now clearly British Airways has it out for its cleaning crew, as the in-flight snack for this flight was a Nature Valley bar. You know, the ones that turn into a powdery mess the second you open it. But I mean, actually I didn't do too badly. Maybe they formulated it differently for the flight. Bit of a crummy snack. Boo! As this was a British Airways flight, I also got a free drink as well, and so the free drink I went with was tomato juice.
Nice.
After an interesting Veritasium video talked about how it tastes better to drink tomato juice on flights due to the change in air pressure on our taste buds or something, I just wanted to try it out, and you know what? It wasn't that bad. What was bad though on this particular flight was just how painful that air pressure felt in my ears. This is quite a rare thing for me to go through, but it's definitely not something I would have had to worry about on the train. However, here's where the turbulence started to kick in. A very large storm was currently battering the UK, with Cardiff getting 100km/h winds, and London, where we were landing, wasn't much better off. I checked out the in-flight reading of safety manuals to put Dodie's mind at ease, but the passengers were really being tossed about, and the flight attendants did not appreciate me capturing that.
May I have your attention recording or...
Dodie is really not a fan of turbulence, so to make her feel better, I informed her that pilots flying into London City Airport have to go through a lot of extra training just to land there, so they're actually some of the most experienced pilots we have. Of course, this is due to LCY being one of the most challenging airports for commercial pilots to land in all of Europe, due to how incredibly steep the approach is at 5.5 degrees compared to the usual 3 degrees. Couple that with a very short runway of 1,508 meters compared to Heathrow's 3,908 meters, and with the massive skyscrapers of Canary Wharf and overall urban environment around the airport, this makes it one of the most difficult airports to land in on a non-windy day. Somehow, all these extra facts did not, in fact, make Dodie feel better, so after some tight hand squeezes and a very shaky descent, we safely made it to London City. But despite being such a difficult airport for pilots to land at, LCY is a utopia for passengers, which is why it's one of my all-time favorite airports. From the second the wheels of your plane hit the tarmac to being at the door of the DLR train, it's just shy of 10 minutes. And then normally you can just ride the DLR wherever you need to go. And that cuts the usual hassle that the bigger airports have of dealing with massive queues, getting through immigration, traveling all the way back into the city. Look at this map. London City, it's in the city. It's even in the name. Listen, this whole trip, I had some major bad luck. And on this day, even towards the end where I was so excited to just get on my train and go home, the DLR decided to go down for maintenance. So the streets filled with replacement buses that was complete bumper to bumper for a full hour. I waved goodbye to Dodie and I had to sit like this for what was meant to be about 8 minutes, and it turned out to be a full hour and a half. Bad luck indeed. I managed to get home with a cumulative travel time from my hotel in Berlin to my home in London in about 4.5 hours. That could have easily been under 4 on a normal day.
Well, that's a bit of a weird continuity error, isn't it? I wasn't wearing this. It's not even the same suitcase. Well, I was hoping to, make a little conclusion with this and give you some key takeaways.
Are you filming a brand deal in the living room?
Yeah, today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. If you're stuck using the train Wi-Fi, NordVPN helps keep your connection to the internet secure and private. And unlike my train, NordVPN is blazing fast. With the click of a button, can easily place me and my connection in Germany. If only Deutsche Bahn were that efficient. Now I can access a lot more German content not available within the UK. NordVPN is super useful when it comes to hiding your browsing history from your ISP, whether that be when you're home or abroad. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, it's worth giving a shot. Plus, if you go to nordvpn.com/Evan, they just so happen to be having quite the deal on a 2-year plan. You get a little something extra as well, just for using my link. So be sure to visit nordvpn.com/Evan and keep your connection safe today. So thanks NordVPN for sponsoring. Let me wrap this up. So if I try to objectively compare my overall experience on the train to Berlin versus the plane back, some really big things stick out. One, no doubt taking the train was more comfortable. There was more legroom, there was more freedom to move around, less pressure, both air pressure and stress pressure, and the overall experience was just so much more fun and wholesome. It felt like a just cozy journey, except for the delays. Two, being able to actually make use of a layover by exploring the actual city of Amsterdam rather than just an airport was truly a highlight for this trip, and it made it so much more memorable, even if I don't remember a lot of what happened in Amsterdam. Three, if the trip had instead just been to Amsterdam, I feel like it would have been a sure win for the train. It's the Eurostar the entire way there, which is pretty much a great experience. It's at the train station near Central, security is quick, and it got me where I needed to go without much delay. Except for the kids that were on the train tracks, but eh. But once you start involving other train lines into the mix, you're just adding more variables for things to go wrong. And it does seem like comparing anything to Deutsche Bahn is a bit unfair, but Deutsche Bahn is one of the most prominent and widely used train networks in all of Europe. Yet in 2023, it was revealed from their own numbers that 58.4% of their long-distance trains arrive on time. That's horrible. That is shockingly awful. If you were someone who wanted a more pleasant journey by train, or maybe you wanted to choose the greener option, maybe you just like trains. You're pretty much spinning a roulette wheel on how long your trip is going to be delayed. And God forbid if you actually have a connecting journey with Deutsche Bahn, because in my case, well, I would have had everything fall apart, even if I'd given myself a 2-hour buffer. That is wild. National Rail in the UK might be bad, but this trip really made me feel like, thank God it's better than Germany's. This doesn't include Berlin's transport network, by the way, which has always been over 90% reliable, but I'm saving more information on that in the future video I'm making comparing Berlin's to London. And 4, I think if I were to compare a flight into Stansted or Luton, which are the budget airline airports that are super far away from London, it also might make the overall time commitment more balanced with the train journey. Plus, you have to pay to get a train to and from those airports, so that might balance it. But a lot of times, realistically, making this decision for me comes down to price. If the train were cheaper, I'd probably get it 90% of the time. But most times when I try to get a train ticket to Europe, the cost is over 3 times the cost of a flight, which basically rules out the train for me completely. And it's kind of an unfair battle here because flying is subsidized heavily by governments. Airlines don't pay fuel tax, and they're rarely charged the full cost of using publicly funded airports. Meanwhile, train operators have to pay for every inch of track and infrastructure, and they're taxed on the fuel too. If I were in charge of the UK government and I really wanted more people to take the train, make that decision for the environment, for just because it's better, I'd swap the subsidies, I'd make rail travel cheaper, and I'd invest more in better infrastructure for rail, especially for those short journeys where flying should not be encouraged. Also, I would just immediately just destroy Deutsche Bahn. If I was in charge of the UK government, I would just ring up Deutsche Bahn and be like, stop. But for the time being, I can only recommend this long journey from London to Berlin for those wishing to experience it, just to experience it, rather than it actually being a better mode of transport. If you've got the time though, and you can work from the train, work from home type stuff, it still does get a big thumbs up from me, just like you did hopefully to this video. For me though, I probably wouldn't do this again unless the price was right or the time efficiency was right there. Otherwise, I'll probably stick to taking the plane. Oh, that's such a negative ending. Stop leaving me negative comments whenever I fly to Amsterdam. I'm sorry, I want to pay 3 times the price. Anyway, hope you're having a great new year and have a nice day. See you next Sunday. I guess give me a thumbs up. They don't matter anymore in the algorithm. You know that? Comment for the algorithm, that also doesn't do anything. The only thing that works is really sharing and I guess watching it. So thanks for watching. Have a nice day.